daughter of Malcolm X, to sue CIA, FBI, and New York City police for $100 million. U.S. allows UN to denounce Israeli settlements. U.S. has given Ukraine $30 billion worth of weapons. A Muslim candidate is front-runner to become Scotland's first minister. Muslims rush to aid Turkey, Syria. First Saudi robot, Sara, speaks in local dialect. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight: the daughter of slain civil rights leader Malcolm X has filed notices that she intends to sue U.S. government agencies over her father's assassination. Ilyasa Shabazz made the announcement Tuesday, which was the 58th anniversary of her father's death. Shabazz accused federal and government agencies of fraudulently concealing evidences and said they conspired to and executed their plan to assassinate Malcolm X. She plans to sue the FBI, CIA, and New York City Police Department. Shabazz is seeking $100 million in damages. Her attorney, Ben Crump, said he intends to take depositions from various government officials. While in prison, Malcolm X was introduced to the Nation of Islam, a black Muslim movement. But in 1964, Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam and embraced mainstream Islam. He was assassinated at the age of 39 on February 21, 1965, by three men who opened fire while he was speaking at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City. 10 Palestinians were killed and at least 102 wounded in an Israeli army raid in the occupied West Bank city of Nablus, the Palestinian Health Ministry said Wednesday. As violence escalates, the UN Security Council Monday unanimously approved a formal statement opposing Israel's ongoing expansion of illegal settlements. It is the first time in more than 6 years the United States has permitted the body to rebuke its close ally. The U.S. is one of the 5 members of the Security Council that have permanent status and veto power in it. The Security Council said continuing Israeli settlement activities are dangerously imperiling the viability of the two-state solution based on the 1967 lines. The two-state solution proposes an independent state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel, west of the Jordan River. The boundary between the two states is in dispute and subject to negotiations, particularly since the 1967 Six-Day War. More than 59 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in the occupied territories since Netanyahu returned to power at the end of last year. Israel received $3.8 billion in U.S. military aid each year. It has been denounced as an apartheid state by multiple human rights groups. Scotland Health Minister Humza Yousaf has emerged as a front-runner in a contest to replace Nicola Sturgeon as leader of the Scottish National Party and the country's first minister. 52-year-old Sturgeon shocked many in British politics last week when she announced her resignation. She said that she had become too divisive a figure, and after more than 8 years of leading the party and the Scottish Parliament, was too tired to carry on. Yousaf is the most prominent Muslim politician in Scotland. He shares similar views with Sturgeon on many policies. Yousaf will take on Kate Forbes, the Scottish National Party more socially conservative finance secretary, in a two-person race. Veterans Argus Robertson, Cultural Secretary, and Deputy First Minister John Swaney have dropped out of the race. A former Dutch far-right MP and right-hand man to Islamophobic politician Geert Wilders recounted his unlikely journey to converting to Islam. In an interview with Anadolu Agency this week, Joram van Klaveren shared that he had been interested in different belief systems since his youth. Klaveren said he joined Wilders's Islamophobic Freedom Party and wrote a book in 2014 to warn people about Muslims. He said he thought Islam was the biggest danger in the world to Netherlands and Europe. While writing his anti-Islam book in 2014, Klaveren again began questioning Christianity. He found Islamic beliefs about the concept of God more logical than Christian beliefs. After reading Islamic sources, Klaveren accepted Islam. His conversion shocked people around him. Now, Klaveren says one of the things fueling Islamophobia is mass culture. He said Arabs and Muslims constantly are portrayed as terrorists, especially in Hollywood movies. Chinese authorities have arrested the mother and 3 siblings of an outspoken Kazakh singer and Chinese government concentration camp survivor. Authorities allege Zanargul Zurmatai spoke with foreign journalists. The 47-year-old was arrested February 10th in Urumqi, the capital of East Turkestan, which the Chinese government called Xinjiang's Uyghur Autonomous Region. This was after she received a request for a media interview from someone claiming to be an Associated Press correspondent. Kazakhstan-based rights group Atajurt said. Her mother, sister, and 2 brothers were arrested February 13th, police and eyewitnesses said. It wasn't immediately clear if Zanargul spoke with a foreign journalist. In previous interviews, Zanargul has said that she was being targeted for speaking out against the government's appropriation of ethnic Kazakhs herding communities' lands. She has accused the government of confiscating the land to make way for highways and hydropower stations around Urumqi. She also said authorities sent her to a concentration camp between 2017 and 2019 after she refused to apologize for a letter she wrote complaining about it. Muslims rush to aid Turkey and Syria. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages. As the death toll from the February 6th earthquake in Turkey and Syria keeps rising, funding and donations from different parts of the world are pouring in. An online donation campaign launched in Saudi Arabia has raised more than $100 million. The United Arab Emirates announced $100 million in humanitarian assistance for the millions of people displaced in Turkey and Syria. Qatar pledged to deliver 10,000 portable cabins and trailers used during the 2022 World Cup in Doha, on top of food and medical aid. Pakistan plans to send 100,000 winterized tents. Aid has poured in from every Muslim-majority country, including Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country, and its neighbor, Malaysia. Algeria was the first African country to send a rescue team to both countries, along with over 200 tons of humanitarian aid, said News 24. Sudan, Tunisia, Egypt have also sent teams and aid. Even Afghanistan, which is facing widespread poverty, has donated about $200,000 in cash. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has still not defended the BBC over its critical documentary about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India has banned the documentary and raided BBC offices. Modi's BJP government is renowned for attacks on the country's media. In 2022, an international media watchdog ranked India 150th out of 180 countries in its Index of Press Freedom. Neither Sunak nor the British government have defended the kingdom's broadcasting services from Modi's assault. UK Labour Party leader Keir Starmer recently criticized Sunak as hopelessly weak and not big enough for the job. Starmer suggested Sunak is being bullied by Modi's government and has been too slow to react. Former President Donald Trump took to his Truth Social platform to suggest anyone running for the presidency should agree to a mental competency test. He also suggested prospective candidates should agree to a test which would prove that they're physically capable of doing the job. He added being an outstanding president requires great mental acuity and physical stamina. In 2020, Trump boasted he aced a cognitive test that he took during a Walter Reed Hospital physical. He told Fox News' host Sean Hannity that doctors were very surprised at how well he did. He also called on then presidential candidate Joe Biden to take the same test. The test Trump referred to later was discovered to be a simple one designed to find signs of dementia. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with nearly $30 billion in military assistance since Russia began its war 1 year ago, according to data reviewed by Anadolu Agency. U.S. President Joe Biden announced nearly $500 million in aid during a surprise visit to Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, on Monday. It is earmarked for a wide range of equipment, including artillery, ammunition, radars, anti-personnel mines, and anti-tank weapons. The breadth of U.S. arms supplied to Ukraine has grown steadily over the course of the conflict to meet the country's needs. Ukrainian forces have been supplied with sophisticated anti-air and long-range artillery systems, as well as battle tanks sought by President Volodymyr Zelensky. 52% of Americans do not agree to sending more military aid to Ukraine, according to an AP poll. A coalition of many diverse organizations rallied against the war machine on Sunday in Washington, D.C. A U.S. judge ruled Tuesday that family members of the victims of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks are not entitled to funds from Afghanistan's central bank. U.S. District Judge George Daniel said awarding the family money seized from the Afghanistan Bank would require an assessment that the Taliban is Afghanistan's legitimate government. In February 2022, U.S. President Joe Biden issued an executive order saying that he would split the $7 billion in Afghanistan's frozen assets between Afghanistan people and the September 11th victims' families. Though the Taliban were not directly involved in the attacks, lawyers for the families argued that they helped enable al-Qaeda, which mounted the attack. In a Saudi dialect, the first Saudi robot Sara welcomed visitors to the Saudi Digital Pavilion at the LEAP 2023, an international technology conference. LEAP 2023 concluded on February the 9th. The robot Sara was manufactured in cooperation between Saudi Digital and QSS Company. It can communicate and interact with visitors, perform popular dances, and respond to visitors' inquiries. Sara contains a camera that works with artificial intelligence. It starts a dialogue with a visitor, welcoming it with the phrase, "Hello, Sara." The robot recognizes different Saudi dialects, analyzes sentences, and understands their content. It then provides appropriate answers and sends them in the form of text messages. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. To talk about the first anniversary of the Ukraine war, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
In Thank you, Hena. It was 1 year, 1 day ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukrainians stood up to defend themselves, and defense and offense, offense and defense, it just goes on and on. Russia marked the anniversary by suspending nuclear treaties. President Biden marked the anniversary by visiting Ukraine. But the peacemakers of America showed up in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol Hill, asking politicians to think of peace, peaceful settlement, negotiations. Nobody is telling us how many people are dying from both sides, but people keep pumping up whatever they got. We have someone who led the effort at Washington, D.C. For encouraging politicians to encourage negotiation instead of pumping more guns and more ammunition. Medea Benjamin, welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Hi, wonderful to be on with you.
Medea Benjamin is co-founder of Code Pink. Why was it important for peace movement to show up Capitol Hill and talk to politicians?
What we see happening in Washington, D.C. is just terrible. They keep sending more and more billions of dollars worth of weapons to Ukraine every time they cross their own red line because they say, we're not going to send HIMARS, then they send them. We're not going to send tanks, then they send them. Now it's about fighter jets. Every time they cross their line, we go deeper and deeper into this war. And on the other hand, we hear from people like General Mark Milley, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that this war is not winnable on the battlefield. So, why do we keep sending more weapons? Why do we keep encouraging the Ukrainians to keep fighting instead of going to the negotiating table?
Is there a negotiating table?
There's always a negotiating table. And we see that the Ukrainians and the Russians were actually negotiating in late March, early April, with the help of the head of Turkey, Erdogan, as well as there were other negotiations that it turns out that the former prime minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, was involved in. And in both cases, we find out that the West actually encouraged Zelensky not to continue with those negotiations, but to fight on, because in the end, what the West wanted was to weaken Russia. And so we have Ukrainians dying every single day in this fight that can only be won at the negotiating table. And I think the outlines of the negotiation are very clear. Russians would leave Ukraine, that Ukraine would be a neutral country, not a member of NATO, and there would be decisions made about how to rule people in the Donbass and about Crimea, and that could be done later on. Security guarantees for Ukraine that it wouldn't be invaded in the future. I mean, all of these things were being worked out. They are what is going to be worked out in the end. But is the end going to be in a month or two from now, or in a year or two from now, or will we actually move towards a nuclear war, which could be the end of life on this planet? And I think that depends on us. I think that depends on the people of the world rising up and demanding from their leaders that they do everything they can to push for a peace process. And certainly we haven't heard that from Biden. What we hear from him is, we are with you until victory, but there is no victory in this war.
Do you have any idea how many people might have died on both sides? Of course, Russian fighting are human beings, and so are Ukrainians. Any idea? I mean, nobody is talking about casualties here.
We have no idea. What we heard at one time from Mark Milley, he just threw out saying 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers and 100,000 Russian soldiers, but with absolutely no proof of that. I think those are high figures, but still, the figures are totally unknown to us. We see that there are groups that have been trying to document the casualties and have come up with about 13,000 Russian soldiers. But again, we don't know. And the civilian casualties, we don't know them either. But every single life is precious, and every day that goes by, more precious lives are being wasted.
Medea, I mean, you walk on those aisles all the time in Washington, D.C., try to influence people in multiple ways and get their hearing. How was your lobby day? Were you able to talk to some senators and congressperson, which will matter in this?
We were only able to talk to their staff because Congress is not in session this week. But it is the staff that often make these decisions. So we had very important talks. We went to the offices of all of the members of the House Armed Services Committees. And then we went to individual offices. Right now, there are 11 members of the Republican Party that have signed on to a House Resolution 113 that calls to an end to the weapons to Ukraine and calls for negotiations. But there are no Democrats right now that will sign that or that will introduce their own resolution. And that's what we are pushing for, either a bill or a resolution that both Democrats and Republicans can agree to. Unfortunately, the only bipartisan bill, well, it's not a bill, it's a letter that went to President Biden, was one calling for fighter jets to be sent to Ukraine. So we have a long way to go. But I must say that our reception was quite good, especially among the staff. And I think that this is a political issue. They have to hear more from their constituents. And now we see an AP poll that says that for only 48% of Americans want to send more weapons to Ukraine. That is a very low number given the media narrative that we hear, given what is emanating from the White House and from Congress that is pro weapons to Ukraine. The fact that only 48% agree with that. And when we went to the offices of our congresspeople, we told them that statistic, which has been the number of people supporting the weapons has been going down and down as the months go by. And we said that you should be representing that. There should be at least 52% of Congress that says no, or at least questions this blank check for weapons. And that's not what we have now.
Madhya Benjamin, what's your feel? Do you think some hawks in American military-industrial complex want to do to Russia what we did to Soviet Union in Afghanistan?
Well, we heard this directly from the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who, came to his position directly from the board of the largest weapons manufacturer, Raytheon. So there is certainly an interest in the weapons manufacturers to keep this war going. And there is an interest among people in the what I might call the warrior state, who want to use this opportunity to weaken Russia, but they want to do that so that then they can focus their attention on China. I mean, they're crazy if they want to take on not only Russia, but China. And yet, this is big business, and there is quite a vicious circle between the weapons industries, the lobbyists that pay for the elections of different senators and members of Congress, and the people who go in and out of the Pentagon from the weapons lobbies. Unfortunately, what President and General Eisenhower warned us about back in 1961 of beware of the undue influence of the military-industrial congressional complex is exactly what we are seeing today.
Madhya, there is quite a bit of groups who are concerned about the nuclear warfare. Why only 40 people showed up on the lobbying day? Where are these people who have been writing and opposing nuclear weapons and things like that? I mean, it seems when it comes to nuclear power, all the treaties and every conversation to ensure it doesn't happen, is happening. People are loosening their strength in the area of a powerful voice and things like that. And I was on a Council on Foreign Relations list, and there was one presentation that two nuclear powers can have conventional warfare and can win also. So I say, wait a minute, who is presenting and why? So, what are your thoughts? Why the people who are against nuclear, warfare are not speaking up?
It's a very, very good question that you raise. And I wonder that myself because there are so many groups that understand the dangers of nuclear weapons and nuclear war. We have the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists telling us that we're 90 seconds away from midnight, closest to a nuclear war or Armageddon, we should call it, than we have ever been. And we have Russia just now pulling out of the only arms treaty left with the United States, the New START treaty. And so we are at a very, very dangerous moment. And perhaps you and I can work together to get some of these groups to join us, just like we should be working together to get people of the faith-based community into the halls of Congress. The faith-based community, as you well know, does not want to see an end to God's creation. And so we should be swarming those halls with people who are concerned about the path that we have taken and want to show Congress that the correct path right now is one to use diplomacy. In fact, that is the only rational path that we can take.
Well, thank you so much, Medea Benjamin, for your time.
Thank you so much. Nice being on with you.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.